began on an ordinary winter afternoon when the sky above Lausanne hung low and gray, the kind of sky that makes every sound feel closer than it is. Alessia and Livia Schepp were 6-year-old twins, identical in appearance, different in temperament. Alessia was quieter, thoughtful. Livia restless and curious. They lived with their mother, Irina Lukidi, in a modest apartment overlooking Lake Geneva. Their parents had separated the previous year, a quiet fracture that had grown into a cold distance. The girls spent alternate weekends with their father, Matthias Schepp, a Swiss-Italian logistics manager who lived 30 kilometers away in Saint-Sulpice. On Friday, January 28, 2011, Irina packed 2 small overnight bags, matching pink rucksacks with cartoon animals, and placed them by the door. The twins were excited. Their father often took them to the lake or to the mountains. At 5 p.m., Matthias arrived in his dark blue Audi A6. He smiled politely at Irina, spoke briefly in the hallway, then took the girls' hands and led them downstairs. It was the last time she saw her daughters. The following Monday, when the girls were supposed to return home, they did not appear. Calls to Matthias's phone went unanswered. His office confirmed he hadn't shown up for work. By evening, Irina contacted police. The next morning, February 1st, investigators located Matthias Schepp's car near the train station in Apulia, southern Italy, more than 800 kilometers away. Inside were traces of the girls. Crumbs from cereal bars, a single mitten, a child's drawing of a house by a lake. But there were no twins, and no Matthias. Later that day, his body was discovered near the tracks in the port town of Cerignola. He had jumped in front of a train. His wallet and passport lay beside him. Inside his jacket pocket, police found 5,000 euros in cash, 2 ferry tickets from Corsica, and a letter. The letter said nothing about the girls. It ended with the words, "I can't live without them." From that moment, the case became one of Europe's most haunting mysteries. 2 children vanished somewhere between Switzerland, France, and Italy, their father dead, their trails scattered across borders. Authorities called it a disappearance without geography. The investigation began with Matthias Schepp's movements. Security cameras at the Lausanne railway station captured him on January 30th, buying train tickets to Marseille. The girls were seen with him, smiling, carrying their rucksacks. At 11:12 a.m., the 3 boarded a TGV train. In Marseille, they were caught again on surveillance exiting the platform. Matthias appeared calm, holding each child by the hand. It was 2:30 p.m. The next confirmed image of him alone appeared the following day in Toulon, buying ferry tickets to Corsica. Police reconstructed the timeline. January 28th, the twins leave Lausanne. January 30th, arrive Marseille. January 31st, depart Toulon for Corsica. February 1st, Matthias in Cerignola, Italy, dead by 9 p.m. 4 days, 3 countries. No trace of the children after Marseille. Corsica became the center of the search. Ferry staff remembered Matthias boarding alone. Some said they saw 2 small girls earlier near the port. Others denied it. The ship's manifest listed only 1 passenger under his name. In Ajaccio, CCTV showed him withdrawing money from an ATM at 9 a.m. and buying gasoline later that day. He sent 11 postcards to family and colleagues, all in his own handwriting. Each card carried the same closing phrase, "They are fine." But none were mailed from the mainland, all stamped Ajaccio. Investigators later found drafts of emails on his laptop. In one he wrote, "I took the girls somewhere safe. You will never see them again." They didn't suffer. Another message unsent said only, "They rest in peace." Forensic experts examined his car. No signs of violence, no blood. The child seats were missing, the back seat vacuumed clean. Traces of sand were found near the pedals. Corsican sand, but no one on the island reported seeing him with children. No hotel registrations, no ferry records on return, no footprints leading away from the beaches searched by police. It was as if Alessia and Livia Schepp had dissolved into air somewhere between land and sea. Irina Lucidi was a former lawyer, calm, analytical. She refused to believe her daughters were dead. She traveled to Corsica herself, walking the beaches where police had looked. She told reporters, "There must be a place they were left. Alive. Someone helped him." Her voice never broke. It was the voice of a person holding her breath for months. Interpol issued a yellow notice. Swiss, French, and Italian police shared information but found nothing concrete. A few witnesses came forward. A woman in Saint-Laurent-du-Var claimed she'd seen a man matching Matthias with two girls buying croissants. Another in Cassino, Italy, said she saw twins sleeping in a car. None of these could be confirmed. Each sighting ended in uncertainty, like echoes bouncing off the Alps. At night, journalists described the story as a mirror of the European Union itself. Borders open, jurisdiction blurred, truth lost somewhere between. A Swiss newspaper headline read, "The father who crossed too many lines." Investigators dug into Matthias Schepp's life. A respected logistics expert, no criminal record, no psychiatric history. Colleagues called him meticulous, reserved, brilliant with numbers. But his marriage had eroded quietly. Friends said he felt replaced when Irina found new work and independence. He wrote long emails about loneliness, about losing the light. 2 months before the disappearance, he had bought children's passports, ostensibly for a future trip abroad. He also withdrew 7,000 euros in cash over several weeks. Money never fully accounted for. His computer history showed searches for ferry schedules, weather conditions, and painless ways to die. Yet police also found searches for adoption laws in North Africa and identity change for minors. The contradictions made the case darker. Was this the act of a desperate father or a planner executing a hidden design? On February 5th, Corsican divers scoured the waters near Ajaccio harbor. Visibility was poor, the seabed covered in silt. They found nothing. Helicopters scanned the coastline. Forensic dogs tracked faint scents that vanished at the edge of the ferry pier. An officer later said, "It's like chasing ghosts through fog." Meanwhile, Irina received a small package postmarked from Toulon. Inside were 1,000 euros in cash, a ferry ticket stub, and a note in Matthias's handwriting. "Don't hate me. I had to protect them." The letter was dated January 31st, the day he boarded for Corsica. Experts in forensic linguistics noted the phrasing changed throughout his messages. Early notes used plural forms. "We are fine." Later ones shifted to, "They were fine." The timeline of his language hinted at finality. Theories multiplied. Some believed Matthias had hidden the twins with acquaintances abroad. Others believed he killed them before reaching Corsica and disposed of their bodies at sea. A third group proposed something stranger, that he staged his own death, leaving behind a false trail, but autopsy confirmed his identity beyond doubt. Cause of death: multiple fractures consistent with train impact. His wristwatch stopped at 9:07 p.m. The investigation became a network of conjectures stretching across maps. Swiss police examined ferry logs to Sardinia and Sicily. French authorities traced the postcards. Italian detectives reviewed security tapes along highways. Nothing overlapped. Every lead ended in an empty frame of video or a blurred figure. In March 2011, a psychic in Naples claimed the twins were alive in a convent. Police checked. The convent was empty. The same month, a fisherman near Bastia found a small pink backpack floating offshore. Inside were pebbles and shells. No identification. Forensic tests were inconclusive. The backpack disappeared from evidence within weeks. A bureaucratic error, officials said. Irina returned to Switzerland and founded an organization to assist families of missing children. Her composure became its own tragedy, calmness mistaken for acceptance. In interviews, she said, "I live as if they could come back at any moment. I also live as if they never will." The public moved on. Newspapers folded the story into year-end retrospectives. Yet investigators continued to reopen the file each anniversary, hoping new technology might reveal what old cameras had missed. 10 years later, in 2021, Italian police re-examined the DNA from the Cerignola site. No trace of the girls, only Matthias. But one piece of evidence still disturbed them. A ferry schedule found in his briefcase, highlighting a route not to Corsica but to Propriano, a lesser-used port with limited records. The ship for that route departed Toulon 1 hour earlier than the one he was known to have boarded. If he had taken that ferry, he could have reached the open Mediterranean before sunrise. No cameras, no witnesses, only sea. Investigators reconstructed the weather patterns from that night. Winds from the north, steady, strong enough to scatter light debris, but not heavy enough to capsize a small vessel. A calm sea, deceptively calm. If Matthias had planned to vanish there, it was the kind of night a man could walk into darkness and never be found. In the months that followed, fragments of his journey continued to surface, like signals from a dead satellite. A toll ticket from the Italian border, dated before any official record of his entry. A hotel clerk in Marseille, who remembered a man with 2 sleeping girls asking for a quiet room. A credit card charge at a toy shop in Toulon. A set of coloring pencils and 2 identical dolls. Every clue confirmed the same fact. The girls were alive with him, longer than anyone first thought. Okay, and then they weren't. Authorities consulted behavioral experts. One psychologist described Livia Schepp as a controlled imploder. He would not act impulsively, she said. If he chose to die, it meant everything else had been arranged. Her report used the phrase terminal orderliness, the instinct of a mind that tidies up before vanishing. In April 2011, police received an anonymous letter postmarked from Lyon. It contained a single line: "Look where the sea eats the road." The handwriting matched neither Matthias nor Irina. Detectives searched the coastal stretch near Bonifacio, where asphalt crumbles into cliffside. They found nothing but waves colliding with stone. Still, the phrase lingered in the case files like a whisper with no mouth. By summer, the case entered that quiet stage familiar to every unsolved disappearance. The stage where paperwork thickens and hope thins. Files moved from desk to desk. Jurisdictions changed, and the twins became data points in a European database. Occasionally, someone thought they saw them. A pair of blonde girls on a ferry in Sicily, 2 sisters entering a church in Lausanne, shadows on a CCTV feed from Croatia. Each time investigators traveled, questioned, compared DNA. Each time, the result was the same, not them. In 2013, a break that wasn't a break. A woman in Montreal reported that a man had rented a flat near her home under the name Martin Schell. He lived quietly, paid cash, owned toys he claimed were for nieces abroad. After several weeks, he disappeared. When police checked the address, the handwriting on the lease resembled Livia Schepp's. The ink analysis, however, showed it was a photocopy, a replica of handwriting printed from a computer. A ghost of a ghost. By 2015, investigators estimated over 3 million euros had been spent tracing the twins' path. The case spanned 3 nations, 6 police departments, 47 false sightings. Each year, Irina lit 2 candles on January 30th, marking the day they were last seen alive. She stopped speaking to most journalists. Her organization for missing children, Missing Without a Trace, became her only language with the world. When asked what she believed, she answered, "Belief is not the same as hope. Belief can hurt." But something else emerged in 2018, a rediscovered fairy manifest from Propriano, the very route Matthias had circled. Among the names, a Mchen and 2 minors listed only as A and L. The record was handwritten, nearly illegible, but the ages matched. Authorities could not verify if it was a clerical error or proof of passage. The logbook was photographed, filed, then lost again in bureaucratic transfer between Corsica and Rome. When asked later, the port authority claimed water damage. No one ever saw the original pages again. Time moved like sediment settling over a body of water, layer by layer, until memory itself became part of the silt. By the 10th anniversary, the twins' faces were digital composites, artificially aged. Their eyes, once bright and real, became approximations of what they might look like now. Irina kept the drawings they made before they left. 2 stick figures, a house, a sun, and beneath it, 1 small sentence written in a child's hand. "We will come back." The internet revived the case periodically, each wave of attention thinner than the last. Podcasts speculated about secret networks, cult abductions, trafficking rings, suicide pacts. But in the official archive of the Vaud police, the file remained unchanged. Status: missing, presumed dead. In 2022, a retired investigator named Jean-Luc Catin published a memoir. He described visiting the Terignola site one last time before retirement. He wrote, "The rails are still there. The sound of passing trains is the same. But if you look closely at the gravel beside the track, you can see small shells mixed with the stones. Seashells. From hundreds of kilometers away. No one can explain how they got there." He ended the chapter with one final line. "I believe he didn't throw them away. I believe he carried them until the end." Even now, 14 years later, the mystery of Alessia and Livia Schepp drifts like a ship without a port, every piece of evidence eroded by time, every map incomplete. No remains, no witnesses, no confession. Just the echo of a father's last journey across borders, carrying 2 small lives that seem to vanish into salt and silence. When the wind comes off Lake Geneva in winter, locals say it carries a child's laughter. Most dismiss it as imagination. But some pause, just for a moment before locking their doors at night, and swear they can hear 2 voices in the distance, calling from nowhere, each whispering the same word: home. When investigators finally closed the first file in 2011, they didn't call it closure. They called it suspension. Nothing in the case fit the ordinary geometry of a disappearance. A man dead on foreign soil, 2 children erased between frames of surveillance footage, and a trail that ended not with violence but with absence. It was the kind of case that left rooms quiet even years later. Forensic analyst Marc Dugrand kept a copy of the file in his desk. He said he couldn't let it go. "We spend our lives measuring truth," he once told a reporter, "but sometimes the ruler bends." The reconstruction that never matched in 2012, Swiss police created a full timeline simulation. Every movement, every ATM withdrawal, every ferry ticket was plotted into software that could replay 4 days of travel minute by minute. It produced a map that looked less like a journey and more like a heartbeat. Sharp peaks of activity followed by long silences. Those silences were the problem. No cameras, no cell tower pings, no card transactions. Just voids where a father and 2 daughters should have been. Investigators began calling them the blind corridors. At 1942, on January 31st, for instance, Matthias's phone switched towers near Ajaccio, then went dark for exactly 4 hours. At 23:48, it came back online for 90 seconds. Long enough to send a draft email that was never transmitted. The text read only, "They are free now." No one could explain how a draft unsent could leave a trace in metadata. The server log looked corrupted or deliberate. The second envelope in 2014, Irina Lucidi received another letter. No return address, postmarked from Spain. Inside was a small Polaroid, a playground by the sea, empty, washed out by light. On the back, handwriting she swore was Matthias's. "It's better this way." The ink analysis showed the photograph was printed after his death. Investigators theorized the picture was copied from an older photo and mailed by someone imitating him. Others thought it was a cruel hoax. But the sand in the envelope matched Corsican grain, and under UV light a fingerprint appeared on the edge. Partial but consistent with Matthias Schepp's right thumb. Forensic science could not reconcile the dates. The dead man's print on a photo developed years after he died. The lab report ended with one line: origin undetermined. The archives reopened by 2016. The case had become legend among European police. Training seminars used it as an example of cross-border failure files were digitized. But one internal memo leaked. Possibility of protected relocation not excluded. That phrase ignited new theories. Some claimed Matthias had been involved in industrial espionage. Others thought he sold data and disappeared under an assumed identity, taking his daughters. Online forums built timelines longer than the official one. Some users traced ferry patterns. Others analyzed handwriting strokes pixel by pixel. One thread titled "The Corsican Exchange" proposed that Matthias met someone on the island, a person who took the twins elsewhere in exchange for money. According to this theory, the 5,000 euros found on his body was a decoy. The real sum had been wired offshore. Police never confirmed any of it. But in 2017, a bank in Zurich reported an unclaimed account opened in 2010 under the alias MSH Consult. Last transaction, February 2, 2011, a withdrawal of 9,400 euros in Ajaccio. The mother's decade Irina Lucidi aged quietly. Journalists described her as a ghost of composure. She appeared at conferences for missing children, always with the same line: "I have not forgiven, but I have learned to breathe." She refused to remarry, refused to move. The apartment in Lausanne stayed exactly as it was: 2 beds, identical comforters, a world paused mid-sentence. Every new year, she mailed letters to non-existent addresses. To Alessia and Livia, wherever the sea carried you. She never got them back. She never expected to. Her phone still held a saved voicemail from January 28, 2011. Matthias saying he'd be late picking them up. His voice calm, ordinary. She said that tone haunted her more than his death. He sounded like someone who had already decided everything. She told Swiss TV. New evidence that wasn't new. In 2019, a team of data scientists at EPFL Lausanne re-examined ferry manifests, using machine learning to reconstruct incomplete passenger logs. The algorithm found a partial match between M. Shen and Livia Schepp. It also found 2 minors listed without surnames on a different ship, the Napoli Star, leaving Ajaccio the same night but bound for Livorno, not Toulon. Livorno lies only 200 kilometers from Cerignola, where Matthias died. Had the twins been sent ahead? A retired port officer remembered an anxious man asking how to book tickets for someone else. The CCTV from that terminal was overwritten months before the data review. Authorities requested Italian immigration records. None existed for the girls under any spelling. But one officer off record said 2 children entered Livorno harbor without passports, escorted by a man in uniform. No further documentation was found. The shadow correspondence that same year, a journalist named Clara Heim began compiling a podcast called The Vanishing Hour. She obtained hundreds of emails between Swiss and Italian investigators. Most were routine. One, dated May 2011, was marked confidential. We located a contact known to Schepp from his time in Zurich. The contact operated a private marine transport service. He confirms meeting him briefly in Ajaccio. No children present. Claims he delivered a package south of Sardinia. End of statement. No package was ever identified. When Heim released her series, Episode 4 was pulled from platforms within days, citing legal request. She later said she received an envelope containing only a ferry ticket stub and a photo of her apartment door. She stopped investigating. The psychologist's report. In 2020, the Swiss Federal Police declassified portions of Matthias Schepp's psychological evaluation from 2009. It described obsessive traits, marked need for control, depressive episodes linked to abandonment. Under prognosis, risk of self-harm low, risk of controlling behavior high. The report included a line later redacted from public versions. Subject expresses fascination with nautical metaphors of death. To disappear without drowning. When forensic psychiatrist Dr. Helene Wirth reviewed these notes years later, she concluded, if Schepp intended to kill his daughters, he would have left explicit confession. If he intended to save them, he would have built a structure to hide them. In either case, the absence of proof is proof of planning. The drowned phone. In 2021, Corsican fishermen recovered a waterproof pouch tangled in nets near Propriano. Inside, a Nokia E71 phone, heavily corroded but still readable after data extraction. IMEI matched Matthias Schepp's secondary handset, never before located. The phone contained 27 unsent messages. Most were fragments, coordinates, half-words, timestamps. 2 were intact. Not the end, just the border. Tell them the sea kept its promise. The coordinates pointed to open water between Corsica and Sardinia, 30 kilometers offshore. Divers found nothing. The false resurrection. In 2023, social media lit up with a video from Serbia. 2 young women resembling the aged composites of the twins, speaking fluent Italian, traveling with older companions. Interpol compared facial structures. 82% similarity. Investigators flew to Belgrade. The women were university students from Bari, unrelated. Still, Irina said she watched the clip over and over because for 3 seconds I believed. The file marked eternal. By 2024, digital archivists in Bern reorganized unsolved case storage. They discovered a forgotten microfilm labeled Eternal Do Not Destroy. Inside were copies of the original ferry manifests, older handwriting, different ink. The names of the minors were not A and L. They were written fully, Alessia and Livia. No one could explain why the previous scans showed only initials. An inquiry was opened. The clerk responsible had died 3 years earlier. The discovery reignited hope briefly, but the microfilm degraded during scanning. Frames 43 to 47 melted under heat. The portion that might have shown where they disembarked was gone. The final hypothesis, Detective Dugrand proposed the last official theory before retirement. Matthias arranged safe passage for his daughters through Corsica to Italy, then took his own life to erase the trail. He believed death was the ultimate disguise, but a younger analyst countered, if he built the trail, he also built the myth. The myth protects them better than any passport. No consensus followed. The file was closed again, this time labeled unresolved, indefinite. The unseen footage. In 2025, a documentary crew reviewing old port security archives found a corrupted tape from Ajaccio dated January 31st, 2011. Restoration software revealed 7 seconds of new footage. A man resembling Matthias, walking toward the pier, holding a child by each hand. The girls turned once toward the camera, blurred but distinct, before disappearing behind a column. Time code 2311. Less than an hour before his phone went dark. For investigators, it proved nothing. For Irina, it proved everything. She said quietly, "They existed after Marseille. That is enough." The echo that remains today, the official explanation reads, like an epitaph written in bureaucratic language, "The Disappearance of Alessia and Livia." Schepp remains an open investigation subject to international cooperation. But outside the documents, in the collective mind of Europe, it is something else. A parable about how easily a life can slip through the seams of borders, laws, and light. Children vanish every year. Most are found, and some are not. Yet few disappear so completely that even their absence feels constructed. On stormy nights in Corsica, fishermen still speak of a man who asked for passage for 2 angels. They say he left a note on the dock. When the tide turns, follow the gulls. No one ever found that paper, but stories have their own currents. If you stand by the water at dawn when the world is between light and memory, you might hear the sea reciting something in the language of waves, a lullaby maybe, or just the sound of 2 names being carried home.